Welcome to this Explainer Masterclass. Today, we're going to break down Carl Jung's incredibly complex approach to biblical interpretation and turn it into a definitive, easy-to-digest study guide. If you're prepping for an exam on psychology and religion, or if you just really want to grasp how depth psychology totally revolutionized the way we read ancient texts, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to take Jung's dense, fascinating theories and translate them into a clear, structured roadmap. Okay, let's take a quick look at our syllabus. Here are the 6 core concepts you really need to master. Scripture as a soul book, archetypes of the unconscious, the method of amplification, active imagination and symbols, the path of individuation, and finally, ancient myths, modern meaning. Let's just dive right in.
Section 1. Scripture as a soul book. To really get this, we have to start by setting up a modern crisis, which is literalism versus scientific skepticism. Since the Renaissance, scientific and historical critical methods really challenged traditional literal readings of the Bible. And for a lot of people, that forced a pretty tough choice. You either reject science or you dismiss Scripture as just ancient fantasy. But Jung, he offered a third way.
So what exactly does Jung mean when he describes Scripture as an utterance of the soul? This is a massive core exam question. It's asking us to shift away from viewing religious texts as just dry historical facts and instead see them as profound psychological realities. You see, Jung wasn't really interested in proving whether a biblical event historically happened or not. Instead, he saw that the Bible reflects the deep inner workings of the human psyche. Think of it like a giant, multi-generational dream journal. It's literally recording the unconscious mind as it presses its contents up toward consciousness over thousands of years.
Biblical scholar Wayne Rollins really hits the nail on the head here. He says that for Jung, the psyche is the place where the divine and the human intersect. That brilliantly illustrates Jung's stance. The Bible is a soul book that guides and develops the psyche by compensating for our imbalances. These religious statements are absolutely rooted in the experience of the transcendent. But for Jung, that transcendence isn't found somewhere up there in the clouds. It's found deep within. The text functions as a living, breathing mirror for the soul.
Section 2. Archetypes of the unconscious. Now, to actually read the Bible as a soul book, we first need to establish Jung's map of the human mind.
If you only remember one thing for your exam, make it this crucial distinction between your personal unconscious and the universal collective unconscious. Your personal unconscious is full of your own unique memories and repressed experiences. Think of it as your laptop's local hard drive. But deeper down, that's the collective unconscious. That is humanity's shared cloud storage. It isn't shaped by your personal life at all. It's an inherited psychic structure. It's kind of like how our physical bodies share the exact same anatomical structure no matter where on Earth we're born.
And populating this shared cloud storage are what Jung called archetypes. These are the common human patterning tendencies that organize our ideas and our instincts. Think of them like pre-existing molds. They don't actually have specific content until an individual experiences them, but they absolutely dictate the form of those experiences. And this is exactly why the very same motifs, like a great flood, a divine child, or a dying and rising God, pop up independently in the mythology and scriptures of cultures that literally never interacted with each other.
For your test, you're going to want to remember these specific core archetypal figures that Jung frequently spotted in biblical texts. First, we have the shadow, those hidden, often repressed, darker parts of our personality. Then, the anima and animus, the contrasexual dimensions within us, so the feminine in the man and the masculine in the woman. And finally, the ultimate goal, the self, the archetype representing the total, integrated personality. These 3 are incredibly important because recognizing and integrating them is the literal building block toward achieving complete psychic wholeness.
Section 3. The method of amplification. All right, let's transition from what Jung believed to his actual interpretive toolkit. How did he decode Scripture using these concepts?
Think of Jung almost like a philologist trying to decipher ancient hieroglyphics. A symbol only becomes understandable when you compare it to others. When you encounter a really strange symbol in a dream or a biblical passage, let's say, a sea monster like Leviathan, it's usually way too vague to understand all by itself. You have to amplify it. You surround that symbol with associations and analogies to unlock its true psychic meaning.
Let's look at how this builds in practice. A proper Jungian analysis of a text or a dream always requires these 2 distinct steps. Step 1 is personal amplification. So, if you dream of water, what does water actually mean to you? Is it a childhood fear of drowning, or maybe a really peaceful memory of a lake? But then comes step 2, objective or collective amplification. This is where we zoom out and look at global mythology. Water universally symbolizes things like the unconscious, the maternal womb, or purification. When we interpret a biblical text, we look at how the original community understood the symbol, and then we pull from global religious history to uncover the underlying universal archetype. Section 4. Active imagination and symbols. Alongside amplification, we need to look at another major concept for interacting with biblical images, and that is active imagination.
Okay, this right here is a classic textbook exam contrast. Freud reduces symbols to mere symptoms, looking backward. For Freud, a symbol is basically just a sign pointing back to a repressed biological instinct from your childhood. But Jung, he elevates symbols to catalysts that pull the psyche toward the future. For Jung, a true symbol is the absolute best possible expression for something that we can't quite consciously formulate yet. It's paradoxical, it has all these layers of meaning, and it actually releases real spiritual and psychic energy.
Because symbols are alive and always moving forward, Jung argued that we have to actively engage with them. They're essential for a healthy human life and for maintaining a connection to something greater than ourselves. Active imagination isn't just passive reading. It's an invitation to let that biblical imagery unfold dynamically within you. Honestly, it's why, throughout history, biblical narratives have naturally inspired such towering works of art, music, and architecture. The psyche is actively expanding the symbol.
Section 5. The path of individuation. So what is the ultimate outcome of all this psychological interpretation anyway? Where is this all taking us?
The answer to that is individuation. This is a lifelong process of unconscious maturation that fundamentally heals the soul. Individuation is the journey of becoming who you are truly meant to be. It's about moving the center of gravity in your personality away from your fragile little ego and grounding it in the integrated totality of who you actually are.
You'll definitely want to outline these 3 phases for your exam, which Jung saw perfectly mirrored in the Bible. Phase 1 is the emergence of consciousness. Think of the Genesis creation story, God separating the light from the darkness. That is literally the ego waking up. Phase 2 is the confrontation of opposites. The ego realizes it is one-sided and alienated. Jung saw this beautifully illustrated in the Book of Job, where humanity confronts the terrifying, paradoxical opposites within the God image itself. And finally, Phase 3 is integration. The opposites are reconciled through a mediating symbol, bringing us to wholeness. And the ultimate goal of that integration is the realization of the self. For Jung, the self is an archetype of wholeness, that is, practically speaking, indistinguishable from a God image within the human psyche. Now keep in mind for your exam, Jung is speaking strictly psychologically here, not theologically. He viewed Christ as the ultimate psychological prototype of the self, the figure that mediates between the human and the divine, between consciousness and the unconscious.
Section 6. Ancient myths, modern meaning. Let's bring this all home and answer the big "so what" question. Why does a modern 21st century person even need ancient mythology? Well, when looking at the life of Jesus, Jung points out these universal hero motifs. You see the lowly origins, the miraculous birth, the ultimate conquest of death. But Jung's point here isn't to diminish the Gospels by just writing them off as myth. Actually, it's to elevate our own struggles by showing that they mirror this grand, epic narrative. The story resonates so deeply with us precisely because it is the story of our very own inner psychological development.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that ancient myth isn't just history. It is the psychological prototype of the only meaningful life. The hero's external battle against monsters or empires, that is the exact same battle you face internally. It's the struggle for your conscious mind to assert its independence and bring light to the dark, chaotic waters of your own unconscious.
By embracing this kind of interpretation, modern people can reconnect their instinctual origins with their present consciousness. Jung warned us about this. He said that if we toss out our myths just because they aren't scientifically literal, we develop what he called a rootless consciousness. We become completely cut off from the deep wisdom of our own psyche. And that makes us incredibly susceptible to mass fanaticism or getting swept up in modern echo chambers, what he brilliantly termed psychic epidemics. We literally need these symbols to keep our feet on the ground.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on, both for your exam and for your own journey. If every character, every monster, and every single divine encounter in these ancient texts actually represents a piece of the human psyche, what is the text demanding of you right now? Good luck with your studying, and keep actively imagining those symbols.